So welcome along. So today we're going to be talking about prospecting for customers, key partners, and investors on LinkedIn, and kind of like how to cultivate, turn those prospects into leads and then turn them into customers and key partners and investors. And also, what do we really mean by the word investor? Often people picture angel investors, but there are other kinds of businesses that are potentially willing to invest in your business in various ways through running, projects together, etc., etc. Cool. So I'm just reading some of the comments that you guys have left, which is just pleasantries. So let's get cracking. So, okay, so today's session, we are going to look at the importance of taking what I call a hyper-targeted approach to prospecting and lead generation. And also take a look at some of the advanced features of LinkedIn, which allow us to do this. Obviously using a purely digital approach can work, but sometimes with a purely digital approach, one of the barriers is lack of familiarity and lack of trust, just because, sometimes you're reaching out reasonably cold. I also wanted to talk about this concept of customer development. So how we discover customers, we validate customers, and then we create customers. So these are different levels, right? So when we're discovering, we don't know too much about our prospects, whether they be, your customers, your key partners, or your investors. But over the course of time, we get to know them and we're able to validate or invalidate very quickly. So that's customer validation. And customer creation is when we know our customers so well that we can create customers. And that forms a really strong basis upon which we can build a business, right? So before that stage, company building is quite difficult. But once we hit that level of understanding, we're much better placed because we can effectively click our fingers, or probably do something else, not click fingers, and customers will be created. So it's a really strange concept, actually, creation of customer, but it does work, and I use it, and I'll explain some of the things that I've noticed actually when I've been accidentally or purposefully creating customers. And then, how we might capitalize on our successful prospecting efforts. So again, thanks for setting aside some time to work on your business, not just in your business. So, it's important to obviously put a little bit of effort into making sure what we're actually doing within our business is in alignment with our greater vision and strategy. And that requires time and focus, right? So I just thought I would share with you kind of a little bit more background about my business and also customer base, and just provide some commentary and analysis on what I've learned as I've kind of become more and more in tune, I guess, with how my clients and my digital solutions participants think, and what this means in terms of the business model, and also what it means in terms of prospecting and lead gen, right? So there's what I do and how I deliver these kind of acceleration sprints and business model sprints has changed hugely and continues to evolve, right, very quickly. And part of it is from just doing dozens, if not hundreds, of these sessions. And then discovering little bits and pieces about what might be impeding people from seeing the value and making use of the services that I provide. So particularly if you're in a service-based business, this is going to be a really insightful presentation. So first of all, what we need to do is actually provide some definition about what customers and what key partners, and then also what investors. So if you've spent any time with me, you've probably heard me mention the word business model, or those two words together dozens of times already, and you probably you'll probably hear more from more from me on that as well. I'm a little bit obsessed with the business model canvas because I see it as an extremely powerful and underappreciated tool that has probably been developed decades ago. I need to look at the origins of it actually in a little bit more detail, but it's definitely been around for at least twice as long as I've been in business, and it's it hasn't really aged. It still forms the basis of of business, really. It's focusing us on the top 9 key elements that need to come together and need to be aligned to build a business. Yep, so Martina's just done hers, which is fantastic. So when we look at the business model canvas, so when Martina will submit to me her business model canvas, so definitely do that as soon as possible. I've got quite a bit of a string of canvases coming in at the moment. And some of the things that I look at straight away is the key partner square. That's like number 1. And I'll explain why that's even more important than the customer later. Well, actually, I can do it now, because sometimes the people that actually provide the revenue or the investment into your business come from this side of the board. So sometimes you look at your key partners and sometimes you're able to actually wangle some investment out of them. So Business Station has obviously invested a huge amount in me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been to Queensland. I wouldn't have gone down to the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast and a variety of other places, and at one stage they were even thinking of helping me build a website, right? Just like bankrolling it, but I was like, nope, no, that's okay. That's my job. That's connected to my personal brand, so it is what it is, right? So I took responsibility and accountability for that. But yeah, so often I look at the key partner square and understand, does this key partner square actually provide enough resources to actually make the business model work? And so I start with the key partners and then go and infer what who the customers are based on who the key partners are, and who the key partners serve. And these are incumbent businesses that are well resourced and have the potential to make the kind of investments that you might need in order to succeed. So that's the 3 elements: key partners, who could be your investors, and I'll break down some of the other things that they can do for you as well. Key resources, which is where the money comes from these guys and goes into this square. So Business Station, AusIndustry, they provide Commonwealth funding, right? State funding might be something that I tap into in the future, and sometimes plays a part. And then customer segments. Then you've got all the kinds of businesses and startups that I help, right? So those are the 3 elements. So before you go out looking for someone, you have to kind of know who you're looking for. And that's why it's really important to actually map it out on the business model canvas and then have it checked by an advisor who knows what they're looking for. Because if the business model doesn't make sense, then you'll be literally running around like a headless chicken. And I've done this myself. I did it in London, which is a very big place to run around like a headless chicken, banging and crashing into all sorts of things. And it's not that fun. Burns money, and it burns time and energy. So effectively, yeah, at one stage, at certain stages throughout this business building journey, I felt like collapsing because it's, London's a big city, and to save money, you might stay a few hours out of London and then commute in, and it just burns so much energy. Even if you're just on the train or on the tube, you have to change like 3 times, and it's just not a good idea. Then if you're doing it like 6 or 7 times a week, it's hard. So important notes, just important things to consider is I've got 2 kinds of customers required for my business model to work: my customer segments and my key partners, who also act as invest in what I'm doing, and they want to invest in me because they make me more effective and I help them hit their KPIs easier. So it all makes sense, right? And that could be the case for you guys as well, if you think about it, if you find the right key partners. So on the customer side, so I want to predominantly focus not on key partners. I want to drill down a little bit more into the customer segment for this presentation. That doesn't mean the same rules don't apply for key partners. And sometimes the key partners obviously come with that investment, kind of wrapped in, bundled in with all the other good stuff that you can potentially access for them. So you could do this type of analysis on your customer segments / workshop attendees / one-on-one attendees, or your key partners, as I've mentioned. So yeah, if you've got any questions, just please put your hand up. I don't think anything has come through just yet, but do make sure that if you've got any questions or need any clarification on any of these points, or any of the terms or phrases that I use, just feel free to send a quick message in the chat. So ideal key partners. So before we jump into looking at customers, I just wanted to give you a quick description of what an ideal partner can do for you, or do with you rather. So if you identify a key partner, if they're an ideal key partner, they'll have the following attributes, right? And they'll be able to provide the following to you. They'll be able to increase your distribution. So I think Martina was mentioning that she needed to go from having a very small customer base to a large one, and so sometimes partnering can help us do that. They can help you with revenue, because if you sell through them, then or deliver services to them as part of their supply chain, that you can start that revenue engine from a relatively early stage, earlier than you would otherwise be able to do that. They've got an established brand in the business already. Maybe they've been in business 5, 10, 15 years, maybe longer. So, having brand association with them really helps. Technical product and service delivery. So maybe you don't want to do all of it yourself and be like a really inefficient micro business. You want to partner with an organization which will take some of that technical or service delivery provision off your hands. So fortunately for me, I do all the fun stuff, like go to networking and talk to you guys one-on-one, do these amazing workshops, tremendous workshops. But I don't need to do the financial side of things. So financial management, don't need to do it. Program management, I do a little bit of it just to help, just because I'm a decent person, hopefully. And various other things like governance, that's done by a board that that kind of operates without me needing to be involved. And a whole range of other stuff like cybersecurity, and also providing, we're doing this through Zoom, and that's actually provided by Business Station. I don't have to pay for the licenses, and I don't have to set it up, and I don't have to contact people, developers, when things go wrong. So it takes a lot of burden off me. And yeah, investment, a certain amount of investment that can be directed into me attending things and me staying in different parts of the country and tackling things that I wouldn't otherwise be able to tackle by myself. So it does help in that respect. So before we start, I thought I'd refresh you on the kinds of market segmentation or kind of customer segmentation we can apply to our business. Including the fifth one, which is often the one that people miss, and it can create all sorts of strange issues, right? So you've got behavioral segmentation, like how does this person behave? Like, does this person understand what the hell I'm talking about and not in agreement? Or are they like, oh, bullshit? Or does this person take action? Well, anyway, we'll go through some examples of an ideal customer, and perhaps you'll see some of your own attributes in there, because if you're attending these sessions or if you've met me one-on-one, then it's quite likely that you are one of these ideal people. Psychographics, So behavioral is what you actually see the person doing, like registering themselves and being proactive and going to workshops and turning up to one-on-ones, without any prompting. And I found that the people that I've started to attract do behave better and better, which is fantastic. And it could be one of two things. It could be that they're better people, or it could be that maybe I'm explaining myself a little bit better and they feel more compelled to come along to the sessions. Psychographically, how do they think? Demographically, how old are they? Various other, components. Gender isn't a big one for me. Race is not a big one for me. I've got people from all over the place. Age kind of is. I tend to attract the 40+ crowd, 40 to 70, where people have got a bit more life experience and understanding what the hell I'm talking about. That helps. Geographical, that's defined by where the program I serve can provide subsidized support. And firmographically, that's an interesting one. So this program has been designed for the smaller end of town. There are other programs that have other requirements, right? A certain amount of turnover, a certain amount of head count, yada, yada, yada. But if you're a startup, I tend to suggest don't partner with other startups, right? Partner with people that are, individuals that run businesses that are quite a bit bigger than you, at least 10 times as big, if possible. Doesn't necessarily need to be, but as long as they've got like the cash flow and the turnover and the market penetration, then it's going to be much easier to actually kind of co-create something with them. So moving along, so here's a definition of the ideal startup founder for me to serve. Someone that's proactive, so they actively seek support. They're very proactive, so they end up winning a whole bunch of awards often, and they're often featured in a whole range of different publications and all that kind of stuff. So it's exciting to be able to serve these people. And they're positive and upbeat. So they're not completely down on themselves because they haven't been destroyed by the experience, right? Obviously there's ups and downs, but in order to be a founder, you do need to, on balance, be positive and upbeat. That's what I find. Kind of happy-go-lucky. Psychographics, right? So brain development, right? So people that choose to work with me tend to understand that they don't know everything. They've realized that. And they value the inputs and insights of others. And they have at least a basic grasp of what their problems are. They could be a little bit wrong in that, or maybe they've overseen some even more dramatic challenges. But at least they've got a starting point to want to, start to take action. They tend to be more strategic, so they've got a little bit more experience under their belt, and they understand, maybe not explicitly, maybe more implicitly, that it's important to involve the right people at the right time in your venture, and they're able to perceive value in my content, like what I'm actually talking about and the insights that I bring to the table. So some people wouldn't, because they'll be like, no, but we need to raise capital. Right? We don't need to think about business model or something like that. Sometimes there's just a mismatch, or no, we need to work on the marketing message. Working on a business model canvas it's not the right thing to do now, right? So sometimes there's a bit of a mismatch in that understanding of where effort needs to be applied. So yeah, that's incumbent on me to try and to meet people where they're at. So if that is the case, I might pull out value proposition canvas instead of a business model canvas and say, okay, well, if you want to work on the messaging, then this is the canvas for you. It's not the business model canvas. But then later down the track, they might realize, okay, well, actually we need to do both. Demographic. So I've definitely noticed an older demographic. There is a bit of variance. Gender, it's pretty much equal. Ethnicity, varied as well, to be honest. Like a lot of people from overseas, Yeah, and then, but there is a bit of a lean towards people with MBAs because they understand what a business model canvas is already. People PhD, they believe kind of have a bit more trust in the system and you know, going through the proper processes and taking a structured approach. Masters, university accelerator program graduates, see quite a few of those. People that are a little bit more clued up on some of the things that I am wanting to help with. Geographically, you guys know where I serve, WA, Queensland and the Northern Territory. Haven't been to the Northern Territory since I was 2. Don't have a huge market penetration there, but it is what it is, right? If I spend a bit of time out there, I might do a little bit better. Firmographically, so that is actually defined by the Commonwealth, less than 20 full-time employees. So we're here to try to stimulate early stage founders to get their act together a little bit and to make that progress that they need in order to turn themselves into organizations that can be helped by other programs at other times. And, you know, if you are interested in other programs, then just let me know. There's a whole bunch of programs that you can kind of program stack with, interestingly enough, like TAFE's Small Business Solutions program is really good. It's just like you would get me, but instead of for 3 hours, you get 5 times 3 hour sessions. It's a bit more expensive, but the level of subsidy is above 80%. So it's still is hugely valuable, particularly if you identify a really good advisor to work with. Yeah, and I do make use of those kind of services myself. Well, at least I'm starting to do that now because I see that, you know, I can potentially accelerate the kind of value that I can add downstream to my clients as well, interestingly enough. Has an ABN, for profit, and it's anyone that I think both of you guys in attendance are relatively early. So you've had this idea, but you've taken some time to think, you know, you've taken some pause and gone, you know, who should I tell this idea to? And maybe it's not quite as straightforward as just going and serving the first person that signs a contract. Maybe we have to do a little bit more of a holistic kind of planning and strategy exercise. We've got unfunded startups and innovative small businesses, but demographics cover industry, location, size, status and structure, and performance. Yeah, I'm not sure about the performance part, but if you go into LinkedIn, you can pretty much filter by a lot of these firmographic variables. So these give you quite a bit of fidelity in terms of understanding who you're actually targeting. So if I wasn't government backed, then I wouldn't be able to serve this demographic, this small end of town that potentially isn't making 7 figures and able to pay for my services. But given that I do receive that, then I've got this amazing market that I can serve. So there's a whole bunch of triggers for my services, and it's much more than this list. People come to me for all sorts of reasons. I'm trying to focus the reasons around getting that business modeling done as early in the process as possible. But other reasons why people come into contact with me is, you know, things like they've just gotten stuck or they've got problems that they need help overcoming, and they're happy to bring in an advisor to start to discuss what a solution might look like, or, you know, is the problem really the problem kind of thing. They're a little bit impatient and they want to accelerate their process by using someone like me as a sounding board. So that's the case for the really advanced founders. They might think that they're undercapitalized, so they want to mature in order to be better placed to raise money. Structured approach, so your PhDs and your MBAs come to me to work with me through a series of canvases, which provides them the structure to kind of move forward and address some of those blind spots, and a whole range of other things. So I've got to be very open-minded and really hear what they're saying and understand how I can best help. And yeah, over the course of time, just by spending, being proximal to startup founders and small business owners, I've been able to understand them better. but a lot, if you do go through the program, yeah, make sure that you do fill in the post session surveys, or I think it's maybe post program surveys, because that'll allow me to better understand how I helped you and to what extent, and what was the big aha moment for you, or whatever it might be, whatever you feel is important to provide as feedback. Yeah, other insights related to why someone might have chosen me as an advisor. That's obviously really interesting, and really provides a lot of insight that I just otherwise wouldn't gather, right? And what did you think I could provide? Often people come to me not quite understanding what I do, but just seeing value, and then they sign up, and then but what I delivered was a little bit different to what they were expecting. And so that just means I need to communicate a little bit better and take them through that process a little bit better. Yeah, so there's a whole variety of ways of understanding your customer better and better and better, so that when you communicate with them, then they understand what you're talking about better, and can more easily kind of make use of your services. So as I mentioned, like we've already seen some of the other kind of visual strategy tools, but here's another one, another couple actually. So the value proposition canvas, which is another one by Strategizer, which actually maps your value. It helps you with your value proposition design, and then the customer empathy map. So understanding your customer better by actually plotting out what your customers see, what they hear, what they say, do, think and feel, what their pains and gains. Pains and gains are also on this one. So these two are kind of interrelated. This one's more customer centric, and this one is more like, okay, this is the customer centricity here, and that's, well, it's asking a question about how does that map to actually what we're providing as a product or service in terms of value proposition design, right? So these are both very valuable. I think this one's probably better just because it connects us back to product, back to service provision. And yeah, so, but in summary, the purpose of these are to try to get ourselves into the heads of founders or our target segment even more, and get more profound insights. And I'll share with you some of my recent insights, which you'll probably go, that was obvious, but at the time for me, perhaps it wasn't, or perhaps it hasn't been up until this time. So yeah, and it's also sometimes useful to actually kind of go through and collect some of your ideal clients in terms of maybe their LinkedIn profile or their Facebook profile or their Instagram profile, and then just have all of these different, just look at the similarities between the people that choose your services, right? So here's a recent client, Simon Tannock. So he's got a PhD, he's between 40 and 70, more along the science and the engineering kind of thing. So that corresponds to my background as it happens. So I was helping him navigate the engineering supply chain, in addition to some of the other strategies, insights that you can provide at a higher level, right? So that's quite useful. So if you haven't done that in the past, then that's a really useful exercise. So that means it becomes a lot less abstract. You've actually got example personas, and LinkedIn and QI Hub, if you're in Queensland, provide some very detailed information about that you might want to include on canvases like the customer empathy map, which is this one here. And online, there are plenty of videos that will allow you to understand exactly what this is and how it works, how to fill it in. So Steve Blank, who is the guy that came up with this process called customer validation or customer development. And it's effectively how to validate a business model effectively. So yeah, it's aged a little bit, but I think at a high level, it still makes a lot of sense. You go out there into the world, you start discovering customers or discovering key partners that connect to customers. And then the next step is, okay, you've discovered them. How do you validate whether they are customers or not? And that's on the basis of, actions being taken and payments being made and all that kind of stuff, just to prove out the different elements of your business model. And then how do we get to a level of understanding that we can start to create our own projects? Like, a good question is like, what does the origination process look like or feel like? How are customers created? So often people hear one of my workshops that can be an origination event. Also recently I've been hanging out at Space Cubed, which if you're in Western Australia, you'll know is like the center of innovation for the entire state. Just sitting there and meeting people in the actual kitchen, that's really a good, or at networking events, and just telling them about what I actually do. And it's usually something that they've never heard. And then when they realize the value of it, then they start to take action. And then all of a sudden, the customer is created. And then also similar program providers. So I think, Carlos, you found me because you went to hang out at Innovation Cluster. And then I was giving a presentation at Innovation Cluster. And then so you came into contact with my content there. And then once you are reliably creating customers, then at that stage, you can actually build a company around that. So when you first go to market, you might go under someone else's brand. But then once you get to this level of understanding, you can create key partners and you can create customers. You're in a very strong position to spin out and do what you need to do by yourself. So just a few definitions, or just a reminder what the difference is between prospecting and lead gen. Prospecting is reaching out through LinkedIn, using the filters to actually find and start to add and start to communicate with prospects. And then lead gen is an activity that you would undertake to actually convert those potential prospects into active leads, right? So they go from passive, not even window shoppers, to people that are inspired to take action and do something together with you, whether it be use a product or a service of yours or a proprietary process that you've created. So in my case, like most of the intellectual property is already out there in the public domain. So there's literally zero hard intellectual property. It's just how I apply it in the real world. And that's really, it's know-how, really. It's not even a trade secret because people can look at it, but they don't understand really how it works unless I break it down for them. And even if I do, they might not be able to execute it the same way. Because, yeah, anyway, so this idea that someone could just take your idea and replicate it, yeah, I mean, maybe if they happen to be the right person to do that, but it's actually more difficult than it sounds. So I don't know, intellectual property seems like a bit of an aging concept. I think even I heard earlier today that Tesla or SpaceX or now has like open source patents or something like that, some weird, bizarre concept like that, where they realize the ideas are only so valuable, and it's actually how you actually apply them in the real world that makes all the difference. Anyway, so you can use LinkedIn to undertake customer discovery, validation, creation. So I was updating this from a previous version of this presentation. And at the time, I thought the limiting factor for me wasn't how well I understood the customers. And actually now I understand the customers even better, right? It was instead, how well can I search for them and how well my sales and marketing channels work to activate them. But I've actually discovered something even more profound, which I'll share with you either in the next couple of slides or towards the end of the presentation. I can't remember what order it goes in. So, your depth of knowledge of customers just continues to deepen and deepen and deepen, right? Until you actually have the whole thing come together. So, if you don't understand your customers from day one, that's okay, right? It takes, hints and clues will emerge and pop up all the time that will help steer you in the right direction. Okay, so here's the big insight, right? So what I decided is my lead generation problem, so to take from prospect to lead, was that founders weren't familiar enough with this canvas, right? This business model canvas, right? So founders would fit into these categories, right? They'd never seen a business model canvas before. They'd seen one once or twice and then forgotten about it. You see things all the time. No one has a perfect memory, or maybe they just don't understand what the importance of the business model canvas is, which is point 3. And sometimes there's confusion between the business model canvas and the lean canvas. Completely different components, right? So some of the business model canvases, building blocks are different to the ones in the lean canvas. And then there's another group of people that mentioned that they filled in one of these 10 years ago for a different business, and they never thought of doing it for their new business. So you might find that you're in one of these camps, but irrespective, that creates a problem for me, right? Which is my big set of lead generation problems. And so what my next step to do is, just like the Bible was evangelized to Christian followers, and then actually in the personal development industry, what I know is that a lot of personal development gurus actually use a book similar to, like, this one is used used to be predominantly used by Bob Proctor. So I remember, because I actually had a client that was a Bob Proctor fan. She was from Ireland. This was back before I was serving the Australian market. And then I was interested, so I started adding all these people from the Proctor Gallagher Institute. And one of the things that, so they started reaching out to me, and they asked me how I'd read this book. And this book kind of is kind of the equivalent to the Bible for Christians, right? So Think and Grow Rich. And I think for other groups as well, they use this book and herald it as somewhat of a supernatural text almost. But it's interesting how it works, right? So that was their primary filter for, was I going to be a client or not? Had I read this book, and had I understood it and enjoyed it and all this kind of stuff? So for me, my Bible or Think and Grow Rich equivalent could be the business model canvas. So I need to evangelize the fact that this is pretty important to do, right? And that will help me solve my big lead gen problems. At least I think. I'll have to get back to you guys once I've done it, and I'm going to be doing it this afternoon. So I should be able to provide you some further insights. Or maybe there'll be more problems that are created, maybe they'll take it home and then they'll still forget about it. Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, that's what marketing is there to solve, right? These kind of problems. So let's get back to prospecting through LinkedIn. So just to look at LinkedIn in a little bit more detail. So my kind of, the people that I can serve through this program have the following titles typically. Founder, co-founder, founder, CEO, managing director, general manager, director. And for this search, I'm not sure, maybe that's not close enough. I'll zoom in a bit so you guys can blow it up a little bit more so you guys can see what's actually there. Just an example result. So I'm starting to use a couple of filters here to actually prospect outside of my, just need to reshare the screen actually. Apologies for that. So I'm looking for connections that are outside my primary connections, just to see who's doing what throughout Queensland. So I know what titles I'm looking for. Look, I know what locations I'm looking for. So that's like a primary filter. If you're not a founder, then it's unlikely that you will be a client of mine in the future. Although sometimes you won't declare it, right? So it might be a side hustle that because you've signed a contract with ANZ or some really restrictive organization like Department of Defense, then you can't actually kind of publicly declare what you're doing until much later down the track. Then in addition, in my case, in addition to LinkedIn, I use QI Hub, which is it's an ecosystem software that I want to bring from Queensland into the Western Australian market. So we've already started to have conversations around that. And I can use the same kinds of screen, you know, so effectively I don't even need to use, yeah, this naturally just captures this demographic anyway, right? This people with these role titles. And naturally it's aligned with Queensland. So effectively I'm using LinkedIn as primary filtration you know, methodology, and then QI Hub as a secondary one. So there's different pros and cons of each of these. So LinkedIn, you can message a lot more people, but it's a lot more noisy. And QI Hub, you can get much more granular. In, you know, you can, in my area, you can filter down a lot further. So including this incredibly important filter, which you can't read very well, but it says looking to meet mentors, right? So this filter really separates the wheat from the chaff for me, because a lot of founders are not open to mentorship yet, right? In the future they might be, but they might be just getting started and really not knowing that a lot of the knowledge that they need is actually in the head of someone else, and they need to allow that transfer to happen. And so that, yeah, that's called, Reid Hoffman, who actually created LinkedIn, describes this as network literacy. So how literate you are at tapping into the knowledge bases of others in your network. Yeah, it's an incredible, you know, it can be incredibly a powerful approach, and it can save you a huge amount of time rather than having to Google endlessly and then still potentially misinterpreting what the results are. So yeah, that's the secondary filter. You can also use another device, another application, which isn't too popular in Brisbane just yet, but is much more popular in some of the bigger startup capitals like London, San Francisco, Berlin, these kind of places. And yeah, typically the bigger the city is, if it's an English-speaking one, and the closer it is to either Europe or the US, the more mature the ecosystem. So Brisbane might not be mature enough for Shaper yet, but I think Sydney and Melbourne might be. They're just a bit bigger, you know, just a bit bigger and just a bit more kind of integrated, I would say. A bit more mature. A lot more work has been done on the ecosystems. Oh, a little bit more. Yeah, it's a bit of a sliding scale. But I used to use this application when I was targeting London, right? So I could use these kind of filters like founder, CEO, find mentors, and their location. So yeah, that's how to get really hyper targeted. So yeah, effectively, I definitely advocate for use of course, the big broad spectrum platforms like the LinkedIns and the Facebooks and the Instagrams, but sometimes there's also more specialized platforms that allow you to tackle, you know, drill deeper into a specific demographic or psychographic group, like startup founders, for example. So that's pretty much it. I'm not sure if I've covered everything, but yeah, I mean, how all of this fits together within your business is super important, like how you do the prospecting, how you convert those prospects into leads, and then how you know, kind of reliably move those forward into actually working together. That's incredibly important. To the extent that I've actually spent quite a bit of time, and I think I had a session yesterday that Carlos attended on modeling out your sales processes. So actually all of these processes that I've described, I've actually modeled out using Miro, and sometimes it's really worthwhile getting them reviewed. So first of all, yeah, for your first pass, you'll probably create, how would you say, like a sales process that doesn't make a lot of sense, but at least it's a first pass. And then what we could potentially do, I can kind of draw on all of my experience to help you iterate this process to the point that it's likely to start to generate some results for you. And then obviously you'll need to take that new process and make further refinements based on, you know, customer and market realities. So one thing that I can't do is, I can approximate what I think might work really well for you and your business, but I don't have the time to actually do all the experimentation. So that's where, you know, I send you back out into the field to try what we've come up with together and see how well it works, and then continue to iterate these processes until you've got a winning combination, right? So how are we doing for time? Alrighty, so we've covered pretty much all the content. Do you guys have any questions or comments in regards to, or have I missed any key elements that you want a little bit more clarification on? Yeah. So with LinkedIn, so I'll answer your question first, Carlos, which is a really good one. Depending upon, so I have a premium account. So I've actually got, and there's a lot of, I'll actually show you some of the additional secondary filters that might not be available through the free account. So it is kind of expensive. Like, I think it's like £50 or 90 Australian dollars to access the premium account, but it comes with a lot more granularity, you know, ability to set up a lot more notifications. So I'm constantly looking at how my market is evolving through these notifications. So right now I'm tracking a whole bunch of different keywords, and one is innovation. So this is actually you know, an opportunity that I would be a pretty good match for, I think, which is innovation / ideation expert. I haven't looked at the details, but yeah, just so that's based on my profile. So it generates a whole bunch of opportunities based on my profile. I can also see all the contracting positions and all that kind of stuff that relate to what I do by setting up these job alerts. And you get up to 20 of them. And so I'm looking at the Melbourne market just because it might be an interesting market to target into the future. So these are the kind of keywords that I'm looking at. Not sure if you can do the same in the free tier or not. But yeah, and then you've got even more advanced ones than premium. So premium, I think, is for individuals and sole traders and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got like sales navigator, and you've got recruitment ones. So all different kinds of functions. And then if I look for founder, and then I look for Queensland, look how many filters come down here. I'm not sure how many in the free version, because again, I haven't had the free version for a very long time. Yeah, so it's $59.99. Yeah, so you can get really hyper granular with the searching. So so that's still in jobs. So I need to go to people, so that you might actually have more people in the drop down menus. You might have more options as well, like here, you know what I mean? But the search feature is so powerful in premium. So I ran like a speed networking event in Perth in February, and if I type my name in, it remembers, right? And it's got, obviously I'm having one tonight, so that therefore, you know, and I've posted this one recently, but anything with my name and speed networking comes up through this search, which is really, really exciting. So hopefully we're going to have the exact same kind of event as last time. Hopefully, but this time I understand Founders a little bit better. So, but we're going to be doing almost exactly the same because it worked really well last time, just to come into contact with founders in the right kind of way. And then, yeah, of course, with people, if I type in founder, so it seems that everyone has to have a startup these days as well. It's just like having a rock band in the 1970s and 80s. So if you go to people, then you know, you've got connections, locations. So Greater Perth area. And then sometimes you can automate. So with the speed networking, I ran out of time this time, but you can automate invitations to go out to a whole range of different people through the direct messaging. I do find that because of automation tools, and coming to your point, Martina, it started to get really noisy, like the messaging has become really noisy, and therefore people tend to just block it out, which is a real shame. Because on one, you know, there's so much help that we could potentially provide, but people get overwhelmed. So people have been overwhelmed by the feed for quite a long period of time. And then I think they started to get overwhelmed by notifications, particularly me, given I track so many things, so it becomes really noisy. And then people started to get overwhelmed by the direct messages, you know, people reaching out from the other side of the world and trying to sell them something, or, you know, engage with them in a particular way. And also it's a little bit difficult with direct messages, just because, you know, that people don't know or trust you at this stage. One thing that I did do that worked reasonably well in the past in regards to creating a sales funnel, and it, you know, had maybe 10 or 15 people close that way, was to write a blog article. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile and then you scroll down, I wrote an article that said something along the lines of free startup acceleration services to celebrate Tropical Innovation Festival. And then I sent, it was like almost like an open letter to founders that pretty much just said, let's catch up, let's discuss your venture, and provided some necessary background, and then they could reach out. And at the time, this is how I was describing what I did for them. So just some dot points that might resonate with them, and then an offer to you know, reach out for a 15-minute catch up. And then yeah, we'd create a sales funnel that way. So instead of, so I'm just trying to, so this is one that actually worked, right? So actually Tahina, so she happens to be an ex-Olympian powerlifter that that lives in Cairns or something. So yeah, so I sent Tahina a message. I don't think I automated it at the time, actually. It was done one by one, so it was incredibly inefficient. But yeah, you can create these in an automated fashion these days. And maybe because she's regional, she's got less connections, and her, you know, direct messages are less noisy. Yeah, so that's the way it works. But again, with automation, and people are like, it's like an arms race. So unfortunately, some of these, so I did this in June, right? So even since June, I think it's become noisier, and I think people have started to block things out more and more easily. You know, just human nature is to avoid overwhelm. But I met up with Tahina and then served her as a client, and and that happened a bunch of different times. And I also noted that she was on QI Hub, so yeah, I did the primary filtration through LinkedIn and then the secondary through QI Hub, and identified that she was a reasonably serious founder because she'd actually bothered to create a profile within QI Hub. So if you're a serious founder and you're not on QI Hub, Martina, then go to QI Hub, right? So QI Hub is here. So let's just check. I'll just check if I've answered your questions. Yeah. Sometimes I actually almost exceed the LinkedIn search limit. If you go and you want to try to automate your LinkedIn, then there's a whole bunch of different tools. Linked Helper 2 is the one that I've used in the past, and it knows the algorithms of LinkedIn, and it knows all the limitations of LinkedIn as well, like how many profiles you can view for different tiers. And then it actually kind of operates LinkedIn as if it was an actual user. So it scrolls up and down the page and clicks, automates the clicking of connect, and then it sends a series of messages. And then it's got a whole series of different templates and different sequences of messages that you can send. So I could replicate. So that's what I was actually trying to do. I was trying to replicate, I wrote another blog, and then I was trying to automate it, but for some reason it didn't work. And one of the reasons why I think it didn't work is that I think it worked for one person in like a couple of hundred, right? One of the reasons why I didn't think it worked was that I hadn't applied this filter, right? So the filter within QI Hub, which was that they're open to meeting mentors of various kinds, right? So in the first funnel, I was only targeting meeting mentors. So out of 2,300, only 889 are open to actually meeting mentors. And it's interesting that in this community, and you can, people are almost as keen to mentor as they are to receive mentorship. Which kind of makes sense, because in order to get better and to provide more value to downstream, you need to get, you need to potentially receive mentoring of some sort yourself, right? So so this platform provides a lot of interesting analytics that the community can make use of to better understand what the hell's going on in this industry, right? So did I answer both of the questions fully? So a direct message, yes, but send them to something else to read. Don't just try to close then and there, like, let's book a meeting straight away. They don't have any context for that meeting at that point in time. So do you guys have LinkedIn Premium? I guess you don't, Carlos, but maybe Martina does. Comments come through. No. Okay, you used to. Okay, so depending upon how you originate clients, you might decide to use LinkedIn, and then you might decide to invest a little bit more in having premium. I do know that the Bob Proctor Institute, which is in personal development of sorts, was trying to originate through LinkedIn. So, but who knows? There's a little bit more work to do at a higher level before we can. So this kind of prospecting and lead gen is actually kind of like tactical stuff. Once we take a bigger picture look at your business model, then we might start to get to we might have a bit more information in which to decide whether LinkedIn is a good tool for originating your opportunity or not. And it'll also depend on where the communities actually exist for what you're wanting to do. And also it will depend on what your key partners have. Do they have their own communities that they've been cultivating for years? And is that a community that you can tap into? and does that community exist on LinkedIn? So there are communities on LinkedIn. So I run Expressway, that you guys might know that, which is the Innovation Business Network. Are you part of that, Martina? Have you heard of? No. I'll send you a link. I'll send you an invite right now, which you can decide whether you want to join. Oh, we're not connected. Anyway, we'll connect, and then I will try to get you involved in this. So every month or two, I showcase like some really advanced founders. So last time we had Ramona Bullard, David Small's very active on this for some reason, but we also had my presentation, and we had Ops Australia, which is like an agricultural technology firm across in Longreach. We had a guy called Simon, who you saw pictured earlier, and he is north of Bundaberg, and he has this solution that can treat blue-green algae. Just 1 litre of solution can actually treat an entire hectare of water, or water body, and it's amazing, and it sounds too good to be true, but apparently it works really well. And part of the reason why it's I guess difficult to sell is that it sounds too good to be true. 1 litre serving a hectare. It's like pouring a couple of litres into the Swan River and treating it for blue-green algae for 24 hours. It sounds ridiculous, but apparently it does what it says on the tin. Anyway, guys, are there any other questions before we wrap? No, all good. So hopefully that gave you a few insights and new ideas as to how you might go about using LinkedIn, and also this idea of potentially using specialized platforms to help you drill a little deeper into your particular vertical or industry. So yeah, they may exist out there on the internet somewhere, and they're worthwhile knowing about. So anyway, have a great afternoon, and if you've got any questions, just hit me up. You guys have got my my email address and contact details, and I'll see you both soon. So take care, and bye for now.